Pakistan stands accused by its closest allies of failing to do enough in the so-called war on terror. But this nuclear nation is locked in a brutal war here in the tribal district of Bajaur. In this two-part series, I've traveled through the tribal areas to witness the human cost and the reality on the ground for the Pakistani army. Bajaur is now the front line in the Pakistani army's fight with the militants, and what happens in this battle could decide the fate of the war on terror in the tribal areas and across the border in Afghanistan. The headquarters for Pakistan's military operations in the tribal areas which border Afghanistan is here in Peshawar. It's dominated by the huge Bala Hisar fort, the headquarters of the Frontier Corps. I first came to this historic city as a student. The Frontier Corps, along with Pakistan's army, is fighting the key campaign in Bajaur. The increase in suicide attacks against the military means that the security is tight. Walking up between the massive walls of this fortress is to take a journey back in time. The size of the fort tells its own story of a violent and unstable region where for centuries rulers have fought insurgents and lost against a tribal society that has fiercely resisted outsiders. The British took it over in 1849 and established the Frontier Corps. It was set up to subdue the tribes of the northwest frontier, which straddle the border with neighboring Afghanistan. Yet, to this day, the force is still recruited mostly from these local tribes. This building used to be used by the British as prisoner cells, but they've now been turned into a museum that capture the entire history of the Frontier Corps. Right the way through, you find all the familiar names: Waziristan, Swat Valley, and of course the Bajaur Agency and insurgency. Not all the visitors have been military men. And here's George Bush Sr., the father of George W. Now, this is where the gallows were, where the British used to hang suspected rebels and insurgents.
That's a very big job.
Leading the operations in Bajaur is Major General Tariq Khan. He's been a soldier for over 30 years. He was born and raised in the tribal areas, so he knows the Maliks, who are the local tribal leaders. He speaks their language and he understands their traditional values. But in terms of society and how it's governed, the role of the Maliks, the role of the clergy or the mullahs, how are things different now to when you knew them as a boy?
Well, basically, the role of the clergy was, it was insignificant. What's happened over the years is that the tribal Malik has either been removed or has become totally irrelevant, and the clergy have taken over. It has now become into an ideological thing to some extent.
Because the mullah is all powerful.
Because the mullah is all powerful. One of the things which I feel in defeating militancy and extremism, etc., is to fall back on one's traditional culture. People have to be affiliated with their past. Identity has to be established, and I think culture is going to show the way to society.
As a bugle sounds the last post, it's easy to forget here in the fort the danger facing the men not far away in Bajaur. Well, it's early in the morning and I'm back at the Frontier Corps headquarters because the only way into Bajor is with a military escort. It's in the middle of a huge military operation, and besides that, it's an actually restricted area where foreigners are not allowed in. There have been a number of kidnappings, and the only way into and out of the Bajor agency is with the army. It usually takes 3 hours to drive to Khar, the main town in Bajor. The fighting means an 8-hour detour. Al-Qaeda's number 2, Ayman al-Zawahiri, is believed to be hiding in Bajor, and like many foreign fighters, he's married a local woman. Bajor is the main transit route for Taliban fighters in and out of Afghanistan's neighboring Kunar province.
So this has over the time been a kind of a playground for the militants, their playgrounds, their training grounds, their spaces where they've got safe havens. And I think if we get this under control, we'd have helped in reducing the impact of militancy all over Pakistan.
In October 2006, a religious school in Bajor was hit. An American drone flying over the area filmed this activity inside a compound. These men appeared to be undergoing some kind of guerrilla training, and the Americans believed 2 top Al-Qaeda leaders were also present. Local witnesses said the attack was launched by the Americans, but the Pakistani authorities took responsibility for bombing the school, killing close to 80 people. Thousands protested, and the reaction against America and Pakistan's government was led by Fakir Muhammad, the local commander of the Taliban alliance, Tehreek-e-Taliban.
There were only young innocent boys in the seminary, aged between 17 and 25. The youngest were only 15. Only one religious teacher was there. He was between 25 and 30 years old.
The most important person here is Fakir Muhammad. He is number 2 to Baitullah Masood of the Tehreek-e-Taliban movement which had started up. And he's the one who actually is resisting the army at the moment.
The Bajor operation began in August 2008 when a Frontier Corps unit of 150 men was sent to establish a post in Loasam, just 13 kilometers from Khar. Within 2 hours, they were under attack by the Taliban and were soon surrounded. Stunned by the strength of the Taliban, the Pakistan army relaunched their campaign in September 2008. I arrive at Khar Fort as the real battle for Bajor is beginning. I'd expected it to be a series of raids, but was soon to discover it's a full-scale war. The army believes the battle here will be central to the fight against militancy in the region and the world. I'm keen to get straight to the front line, but then the weather takes over. As the light fades and the rain stops, so begins the loud nightly routine of war. It goes on throughout the night, every night, as Taliban compounds and cave hideouts are pounded.
1761, elevation 301. 301.